What's going on, Soul Tribe? I salute the divinity in you, and welcome to my channel, Alchemist. Justin here, and bringing a little nugget to add to the Soul Tribe archive. And in today's video, I'm going to be talking about Venus and Scorpio in the first house. This is an interesting one, kind of a mixed bag for Venus to be in. Now, when you talk about the lovely Empress, the nature of Venus is how we experience beauty, how we express that in love. The things that Venus brings harmony and concord. And Venus is how Venus in ancient astrology was known as the lesser benefic. And so Venus is how we enjoy all the pleasures in life. It's that all the senses, our relationship with sound, with sights, with taste, with touch, with smells. Those are going to be the very kind of Venusian factors. Venus, how we nourish and kind of take care of things, and how we receive, and how we even attract and magnetize things. That's going to be the kind of Venusian flavor there. But there's creativity that comes with Venus again, because it's like, how do we bring balance and harmony? What does that look like for us, and how does that fit in with this kind of grand scheme there? How do we work with those energies? So that could be a very nice one for Venus. And then when you talk about Scorpio, Scorpio is ruled traditionally by Mars, and they are the fixed water sign, and they are receptive or yin in nature. And having that martial quality, Scorpio is very different from the other water signs, because Scorpio carries its water with them. So it holds its emotions very close to its chest. It's one that it can be a bit of a mysterious energy sometimes. It can be hard to read Scorpio, but Scorpio can read you though. Scorpio has a very sharp intuition. They can sense, the kind of undercurrents, the rumblings when something doesn't quite feel right, something feels off there. There's a real kind of I think that with that martial quality, there's maybe a bit of, how you feel that is just like maybe a bit of an excitable energy. Every time I felt Scorpio, it just feels like these waves. Every time I sense it, or kind of around me, when it's like really activated. But Scorpio, I feel, is they're great healers. I think that there's a lot of love that comes with Scorpio. I think water energy again is very psychic. I think that Scorpio has the ability to hold and channel that water, to give that form and to transmute that into something else. It's a really, really great gift. I think that Scorpio has there, again, very healing energy with them. And then you talk about the first house. The first house is this is arguably the strongest house. This is going to be in ancient astrology was known as the helm, or this is where the ascendant lives, and that's going to be one of I work with whole sign houses, so the ascendant is a sensitive point of the body, but it encompasses the whole house, and this is going to be the horizon marker for you, and that's going to determine whether you have a night or a day chart. And then considering that we're talking about Venus, if you have a night chart, Venus is going to be where it's at. You're going to want to really tap into those Venusian qualities, because that's where you're going to find the most beneficence, from Venus. But the first house deals with things like the health, life, the body, and beginnings are just like the beginning of all actions, kind of personality, things along those lines. But when you're working with this placement, a couple of things to consider. You would have easy enough, you have a Scorpio rising by whole sign, and you're going to want to look to Mars, because Mars is going to be responsible for this house, but also for your sixth house, which deals with sort of like accidents, illnesses, work, and servitude. And then Venus is going to be responsible for your seventh house, which deals with like marriage, relationships, partnerships, and just like other people in general. Living abroad can be another thing for the seventh house, but also is going to be responsible for those 12th house themes, which deals with like loss, confinement, enemies, kind of like those hidden enemies, that kind of like house of bad spirits, or the sort of like those voices that bring you down, and something else, tribulations, things along those lines. But one thing that I would, really kind of talk about with this placement is have a good relationship with the body. That would be do some nice things for yourself. Make sure that that you're feeling good, and that you're feeling comfortable in your vessel, and like really feel that on a deep level. Allow yourself, to explore the facets of who you are. Have with Venus ruling that sort of that house, so because 12th house is not just all bad things, but it does have you ask those sort of deeper questions in life. So there may be, if you find yourself going through bouts of depression, or going through 12th house house, sixth house, eighth house themes, whatever that might look like. Taking some time for seclusion, maybe going abroad somewhere, traveling to a place, maybe like an island, going backpacking in a forest, something like that. I think that that can bring about some really, really deep feelings, within, and just really kind of be very nourishing for the body. I think that having different ways, considering that Venus is in your house of, the self, whatever sort of find a mode of creativity with the body, whether it be through dance, it be, Venus can deal with like music. So maybe there's, maybe could be like nice singing voice, or maybe you have a nice speaking voice, or whatever that might, maybe do something like radio, but something where you're just, woodwork, building cars, building computers, whatever it is that you just find yourself naturally inclined to. Make a regular time for that. Really be in that energy of inspiration, because like I said, Scorpio can you bottle up that feeling, be able to tap into that frequently, hone that muscle, man. I think that, because this is one where I should mention, this is where Venus finds itself in its adversity. This is where it's opposite from one of its home signs of Taurus. So the function of Venus find itself a little bit harder to express here. And I think that that's sometimes too, because that Venus in Scorpio can feel so much. And I would definitely say, considering that relationships come into the mix, definitely pay attention to, because water energy is very perceptive. It picks up on the energies that are around it. It's Scorpio on a very deep level. So be mindful of the ones that you form, and how you take on other people's energies, people's hardships, because I could see this as one placement that is very nurturing, very maybe likes to form those deep, intimate bonds with people, but maybe in the, maybe it could be to one's detriment, where you end up sacrificing too much of yourself. So reciprocity would be a very big one that I would say with this placement. I wouldn't say, I'd be mindful of just like completely isolating yourself and cutting yourself off, being a hermit, for maybe, just because of maybe just, real receptive energies, but maybe even out of fear, of maybe forming those intimate bonds, because where we love something so deeply, because again, that's what Venus rules, when we love something so deeply, that there is the potential that that can change, and that, and how we love that thing changes, and that 12th house themes, it can deal with, like loss and stuff. So going through those ranges of emotions, that might be something where you may have to, I wouldn't be mindful of your boundaries, but I wouldn't push that stuff out the way, and be, if that's something that maybe you wrestle with, having a relationship with like a therapist, kind of talking through these, maybe why you may not be beginning certain actions, because of certain feelings, because maybe you love so much, maybe you have such a, that deep feelings that, maybe that might be something where it's not be too, there's a lot, I think that can come up with that one. So definitely explore that space as that makes sense. But I could see this as maybe even too a very introspective Venus, and I think that too, that having those sort of like creative modalities can really help see what's going on outside, what's going on inside of you outside, like having those sort of ways of expression. But the Venus, I think in the first house too, could bring, again, bring some sort of like magnetism, something that just like you just have something some sort of attractive quality, whether that be, personality, maybe just people, you have a way of just like sensing when someone's going through some things, just know like just kind of the right things to say. But yeah, I would just pay attention to that. Venus does has that real kind of deep, attractive sort of like quality there. And pay attention to the type of people that you're attracting, and if you're noticing repeat themes in relationships and stuff like that, pay attention to why that's coming up there. Try not to let that be where it's a continuous theme that's coming up there, because relationships are going to be play a big factor, and not just in the nice ones that you form, but even the enemies that you form. Those are going to be important. How those, what you win and what you lose in those relationships. So, but I do think that this can be one that just with, of course, when you're working with these kind of planets. So I think that Venus can do very, very well here. But I do think that, first, make sure to take care, first and foremost, make sure to take care of your health, and pay attention to how your emotions can signify maybe or what's going on, maybe how a certain sickness may be tied in with a certain emotion. Oh man, there's a book that I have that's called, oh man, I think it's called Healing the Body, Oh dang it! I'll have to look. You know what? Let me pause this real quick and find it. Okay, I found it. Heal Your Body by Louise Hay. I think that that can be something. That might be a book that I could be where you could explore. I have it on my phone here. I got it packed up somewhere in my book, but that's the cover of it. If you're curious, I think that that might be something maybe beneficial. Hopefully, that's something beneficial for you. I think that could really be very, yeah, it's very beneficial for this placement. But yeah, I would like, you know what, and this is just a general theme, some general themes that I would talk about with this place, because I definitely, the one last thing, I would, yeah, if I didn't mention, as far as like, I could see this Venus being one where it could be very, maybe you're helping others, some sort of like service, as far as like maybe in like medicine, maybe you're talking like a nurse, a doctor, energy healer, Reiki, massage therapy, whatever sort of like healing modalities. I would say again, just like I can see this being a very giving Venus, a very nurturing Venus, but I would just say be mindful of how you give yourself. But I would say even allow yourself to get yourself a massage. Maybe explore like even some sort of like acupuncture. Don't be afraid to explore ways to take care of the body, ways that the body can feel good. Look into different ground. I'll tell you what, I have a pretty heavy first house focus. I have this grounding mat. It is incredible. It changed up how, not just like I already slept pretty well anyway, but this like changed the quality of my sleep in a way that, I mean, it just is unreal. Like the body doesn't feel as, I don't feel that inflammation as much. It doesn't feel, it just feels nice, so all sorts of things, explore different sorts of things with the body there. But if those are just some general themes that, as you saw, is almost about the spiral what there in that one. But you definitely need the rest of the whole chart to get an idea of how this translates. But if you have this placement or know someone who's working with this placement, down in the comment section, let us know how this manifests for you, if you feel comfortable with that. And because it's cool to see how these placements just come to life. You just see them light up as people just talk about their stories. Really, always really fascinating. But if you want to work with this Venus more personally, especially if you have like a night chart, really kind of accentuate the beneficence of Venus, in there, and see where maybe some challenges are happening, in your because we all have them. So where some challenges are happening in your chart, and how to better get work with those, and work with those more constructively. Down in the description box, there's my email if you have any just questions about the services that I provide. I offer things from electional astrology to, as far as like if you want to pick like an auspicious day for like like a wedding, a business, a trip, whatever that's looking like. That's available. Or if you just want to go over, maybe you're coming up on, maybe you have you're coming up in like a first house perfection year. So now, you want to see what energies are coming up for you for the year, and how to better work with that. Or maybe Venus is active that year and you want to get eyes on, kind of your natal Venus and things. So, but if that's something that's available, again, that's all you can email me with any questions that you have. But also on this channel, I do this thing called Lunar Shenanigans that covers the lunar astrology, and like what sign it's in, what phase it's in, what aspects, and just a general flavor of the day, of the week. And then I also have one that comes out on moon days. It's a Monday. And then on Mercury days, those are Wednesdays, I have these videos that talk about the sun and the other classical planets, what sign they're in, what signs are going to feel most impacted by them, and how to work with those energies. So that's all available for you there. But until next time, stay mindful out there. Keep raising that vibration through the roof. And I will catch you on the next one. Later.